This week's episode is brought to you by the home and auto insurance brand Canadians trust most, Intact Insurance. Welcome to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Caitlin Green and Sarah Burke. The serious nature of my tone is because the world has gone to hell. There's stuff going on, and maybe it's always been going on. Maybe satellites, maybe social media, maybe our connectivity to the grid on a 24/7 basis is making me feel a little bit on edge this week. So the big story, of course, and we can't not talk about it, is the attempted assassination of former President Trump and newly appointed Republican leader, officially out of Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. Sarah and Caitlin, do you have thoughts on what has happened? Because I find it really frightening. I find it scary. I feel bad for the people that were killed and critically injured at that rally and how horrifying for them. I feel bad for the families involved, and just that this is what, I mean, it was, people are saying it was bound to happen. Was it bound to happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the scariest part for me was that I was shocked for all of 20 minutes. I was out with friends and I read about it. It started coming up on my alerts, and I was showing them all. I was like, oh my God, guys, there was a Trump assassination attempt. And the varied responses, because we're living in a post-truth era where nothing is true and everything is true, was immediately conspiracies. Without even having they themselves read anything online. They were just like, this isn't true. This is fake news. This is an inside job. He's doing it to try to clinch the presidency. And then other people are like, no, this is the Democrats trying to assassinate him because they know he's going to win. Everybody went to a place of QAnon so quickly. And I was like, well, I don't know why I thought anything else would happen, because why would anything else happen? We've all been conditioned to have a particularly unhinged response that isn't based in facts, because in the rush to be the first outlet to break the story all the time, it kind of feels like facts got lost in the equation many years ago. So yeah, I was like, oh, I care for 20 minutes. And then I was like, oh, back to my friends, which is, I don't think, good. Maybe I should explore my response more in therapy this week.
Well, but I just was so much to take in.
Yeah, and also a shooting in the U.S., groundbreaking. It was just it was not.
The thing I thought too was, could this, because the young boy, 20-year-old, I mean, your brain isn't even fully formed at a 24.
It's medium rare.
Man. And just looking at him, he just looked diminutive, his bespectacled, he was a little person. And then he climbed to the top of a building with a rifle and people were pointing at him in the crowd.
I know.
A long time, yelling at the police. There's a guy with a rifle. He's climbing up that building. Yeah. So the whole thing is a debacle. So I do hope they unravel it. But what I was going to say is that a lot of people have said, and this young fellow fits the profile of a mass murder type of a situation where, was he aiming for the president, or did he just want to take out a whole bunch of people in the crowd? But they're saying that indeed that isn't true. But the fact that Trump turned his head just slightly to the left and that it grazed past his ear was the difference between a really, really terrible moment where he would have lost his life, being hit and struck in the head.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably going to be one of those conspiracy things, like you said, Caitlin, where when we still talk about JFK, decades and decades later, the grassy knoll and single gunman and the shots from the library. And I mean, that story it never fails. New evidence, new, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is one of those things that we're going to be hearing about when we're 80 or 90 years old, of new things uncovered from the Trump assassination attempt. But it has elevated him certainly into godlike stature with the Republican.
Well, the other thing too that everyone was saying that I noticed was, immediately when you see the photo of him kind of fist up in the air and trying to stand strong, immediately is what some people then viewed as being evidence that he knew this was going to happen, because who would give that response? And I thought to myself, Donald Trump would give that response. Donald Trump knows a photo op when he sees it. Yeah. He is the reason why I think he is so popular for so many people is that he is a showman. And we have been, again, conditioned as a society to want a show, from politics, from people, from everything in life. It's like, entertain me all the time. And he does that. He scratches a deep, dark itch for some people. And in that moment, he delivered. And that's what he himself is conditioned to do. And then everyone started picking apart. Oh, the woman behind him in the hat immediately pulled her phone out. I was like, yeah, it's 2024. Everyone pulls their phone out. You will see the most horrible things happening, and someone in the background's response will be to pull out their phone. I don't know that that makes them good or evil or anything, but it just makes them a person living in 2024. So people are like, well, she's in on it. She was filming it. She was told to get the other angle. I was like, I don't know about that.
Gosh.
I think
I
it's,
yeah.
you know, they live in America too.
They've
probably witnessed shootings. Statistically speaking, they've probably seen a handgun fired. Like, I just think it's a sad state in general for the world that we live in, but like, no part of the story was like, to me, it was all just like sad and kind of like regular.
Well,
it was like very,
that he was a registered Republican and had given a small donation to the Democratic Party like several months before, but that he was a registered Republican. Probably hadn't even voted. Well, he obviously hadn't voted in a federal election yet because he wasn't old enough. He would have been, barely 16, 17 when Biden was elected. So anyway, moving on from that, it's a sad state of affairs. A connector to that is Jack Black canceling his Tenacious D tour. His partner, I guess, on stage in Australia said something, very, it's kind of a dumb thing to say, in a large crowd, and opinions like that you should probably keep to yourself. But he said something about, next time we won't miss or something like that. And Jack Black was just completely thrown for a loop.
It was his birthday wish. That was what it was. They presented him with a birthday cake and then said, blow out your candle, make a wish. And his wish was that they didn't miss.
Well, and there's been so many comments of that, like all over.
So many people said this, and I just feel as though, again, in the event that he was shot and killed, those very same people would be, I hope, wouldn't be gloating. Like, I hope not. But I mean, I
would
don't know.
never gloat over something like that. I think it's terrible.
I don't think so. Not for me.
I don't care.
It's not good.
Who you are. I mean, things should be done with
How
more
is that
decorum.
the
They do have to dial it down.
Yeah.
We all do. We do have to do it in Canada too. This fuck Trudeau stuff and, Pierre Poilievre and just the way everyone's speaking. It's them and it's us. It's us and it's them. And I don't know if I'm a them or an us. Like, I don't even know how to make the discrepancy. And, obviously I have an ethical code and there's things that I believe in, and my moral true north and all those things are different for everybody, but we tend to group ourselves in with like-minded people as we make our way through life. I have lots of friends that certainly don't agree with me politically. It doesn't make them not my friends. I'm not going to be like that going through my life. I think I'd miss out on a lot of really great people, but we do have to dial it down. In North America here, man, it is just, I find it so frightening and so sad. And
yeah, it's also just
that innocent people got killed. I just makes my stomach turn.
Yeah. Well, the guy who was, and then the other thing that happens too is when someone gets killed or is involved in a big trending story in some way, typically they'll have a social media footprint that you can go back on, and then everyone assesses whether or not they like them after they've died. I was like, who asked you?
Well, I thought about
who asked
that.
You? Like, what is happening if somebody went through your social media, or if somebody, like, it's just, I don't know. It feels like it's a lot of really emotionally unhealthy behavior, like stuff that is not intrinsically good for you. So I saw that happening a lot too. People dug up some, again, pretty abhorrent things that this individual who was killed said on their social, so publicly, like it was not secret. But I don't know. I was like, then deciding if you want to like dance on his grave or not, it's just not something I relate to. It's not a compulsion I have.
You wonder what the narrative would be if he were to be killed, how people would speak about him, how CNN or the news outlets, the media in general, how they would paint him, how they would describe his legacy, how they would describe his childhood and his life and his rise up into this unbelievable position of power globally. I think it would be a very interesting story, excuse me, to see that unfold and how he would be spoken about in the past tense. But anyway, I'm glad that didn't happen, because It is certainly not going to be good for the world.
Mm.
And, you know, Trump may not be my guy, but I just don't see him as, you know, there's so many comparisons made to Hitler and things like that. And I just do not see the man in that light. I don't.
By his own running mate, FYI.
So the fellow that he chose for his vice president,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying that, I mean, I know he used to be a very, very outspoken Trump. He was a Trump denier. And he didn't like him. He made no bones about it. And now he's his most ardent follower and cheerleader.
I think he saw an opportunity. I think this is a very opportunistic individual. He's a senator out of Ohio who previously wrote a book, which I read, called The Hillbilly Elegy.
You read it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's a fascinating book. And I didn't see the direction that perhaps he was headed in politically, but he likes to feel important. I'll say that. And so with Trump, he saw an opportunity to be closer and closer to that, you know, nice, cozy, warm spotlight that I think really he enjoys. And so despite the fact that he had publicly said he wasn't a fan of him, and then privately, which then became public, compared him to Hitler and a whole bunch of other characters, it again returns to, like, you can't trust anyone in politics, it feels like lately, because they're going to say one thing and do another, and then kind of flip flop. So yeah, I see him as an opportunistic flip flopper, if I had to summarize it.
Well, speaking of flip flopping, Paris Olympics, we are moving on from that. I'm sure people have had enough of the political atmosphere in the United States of America. The politics hovering around the Paris Olympics are interesting, because when we were talking last week about tourists in Spain getting shot with water guns, and now in Paris, there's something to do with poop once again. And maybe one of you guys can speak to that. Obviously, there's going to be some Olympic events that take place on the Seine, whether it's rowing and, God forbid, swimming, but apparently there's a lot of sewage in the Seine, and they're planning on putting more in there. Like, maybe I'm missing something very important to the story.
It was almost like a protest, because the mayor was trying to, like, for tourism of Paris, be like, it's fine. I'll get in the water. It's fine.
Oh.
So basically,
but it's not, right?
So no, it's not. And like, this is like almost like a century-long thing, how dirty like, I would say it's like Lake Ontario, like where I look out right now. Like, it's just water you wouldn't want to swim in. Okay. We'll put it that way.
Lake Ontario, you wouldn't want to swim in?
Not here downtown Toronto.
Hell no. We just have had 2 straight days of rain, and I'll tell you what happens to our rainwater when we have too much rain is that it gets mixed in with raw sewage, because we have no proper wastewater overflow system. If it rains in Toronto, you don't go swimming for like weeks. Like, that's just a point of fact.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, this is a first for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to cancel my swimming lessons.
You should.
Don't take swimming lessons in Lake Ontario.
So
unless you're closer to the county.
Did the mayor hop into the Seine? This is what
that's what people are waiting to see, if she will hold her word. That's the whole idea. Mayor Anne Hidalgo. But there's a whole website of people, like, taking stock of who's pooped in the Seine right now. So that's the whole story, that they're trying to discourage her from getting in this water. And the poor tourists who will be there as well.
Oh my gosh.
I love Paris. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been there many times over the years, and I've absolutely loved it. The culture, the food, the outdoor cafes. I remember that there's a moment in my life, and I was sitting with an ex. I remember us sitting in this cafe. It started to pour rain. And when it rains in Paris, there's something otherworldly about it. Umbrellas flip up in the beat of a heart. Everyone has little umbrellas in their bags. Like, they're constantly prepared. Their baguette needs to be constantly covered and protected.
And crusty, not soggy.
No, it must be crusty by the time they get home, with their tomatoes and their piece of hard, stinky cheese and their bottle of wine. But anyway, these umbrellas go up, and everything slowed down, and the streets got shiny. We rushed into this cafe, and I remember my girlfriend at the time ordered me like a cognac or something equally as nutty. But we're in Paris. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. It's pouring rain. we were sitting there with a bunch of other people that suddenly ordered drinks. But I'll never forget this really, really ancient woman leaning out the window about 4 stories up, right across from this little courtyard that we were sitting around. And she was leaning out and she started to sing. She was singing something in French and her arms were waving. And she sang, I'm going to say for 30 or 40 seconds. It wasn't an aria that went on forever, but maybe it was a little song about rain. I don't know. But the people that were sitting beside us having their drinks started clapping and throwing her kisses. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, it was probably 1999. I'm never going to forget this moment. And I love having moments like that in my life where I take the time to really bank it. Like it's almost like you hit save. If I don't save this now, I'm not going to have it later. You know, when you're writing something, and I just will never forget it. And I have thought about that random 85-year-old woman singing this song in French with the rain, and then her little shutters closed up like it was a puppet show, or she was in one of those old mechanical clocks where it strikes 12 and the little thing pops out and starts singing and goes back in again. But I don't know why I was struck to talk about that memory.
Well, it's a nice memory of Paris.
Yeah.
I love Paris. I've only been twice, and I feel like you could go back to Paris once a year for the rest of your life and you still not really capture all of it.
Yeah, there's never enough time.
There's never enough time. It's like London. It's like those big, great cities, you know, but it's so wonderful, that city. And I think just the commitment to looking good, not just from people, but like the buildings and the streets and everything. It's really, it just improves your quality of life to look around all the time and not necessarily see people spending a fortune on clothes, and not necessarily to see these massive brand new crystal sky high towers, but just, you know, older buildings that have been well maintained, and like a respect for some continuity in terms of the architecture. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. No greater compliment than when someone asks you for directions in Paris because they assume you're a local.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There's a Canadian gal who during COVID tried out to be part of the Moulin Rouge. Oh. And she's kind of an influencer type gal, but she's been part of like all the Paris Olympics, like because the torch went by the Moulin yesterday. Yep. And she did a big can number outside of the Moulin Rouge. And there was some renovation to what do they call the mill?
The windmill. Yeah.
The windmill. Yeah. So they did like a big organized dance that she was part of. It's really cool following a Canadian who just like moved over there and suddenly so part of culture over there.
That's funny. One of my
show. Go ahead.
You saw Moulin Rouge when you were there? Was it good?
Well, the can, you know, the girls and the the dresses.
I've seen it too. I mean,
back in the day, apparently they didn't have underpants on, but now, they had just full out, just, you know, their privates were just in full display. But when I saw it, they had, you know, little panties on but it's long, and I think you need to be drunk. That's just my opinion on it. Yeah. I can only see so much leg kicking.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, you know, I can only do so much of that. And then I was just like, oh my God, I think I'd rather be at Chuck E. Cheese, honestly.
I guess if you think back on it, if back in the day, every time you kicked up, you got a little under their surprise, perhaps that's why people hung in for so long.
Oh, no, it was definitely about nudity and the absurdity of seeing 25 women lined up and seeing their vaginas every time they kicked or spun or put their derrieres in the air. So
that's crazy. Been living under a rock because I never even thought that.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. And you know what? Don't write me letters, but I'm almost positive that was one of the big perks of those shows. But
I mean, I would think so.
I think I went in 2012 around there. Okay. Were they still flashing their
No, I'm thinking this is an antiquity. I'm thinking, you know, certainly 19th century stuff.
Oh, I feel that. Okay.
That's like so funny to imagine that we've become more uptight as a society about that since then.
Well, I think we've become much more sinister about sexuality and much more clandestine about the shitty things that we do. Perhaps those things were more in the open. They were still considered naughty, but you know, the crap that goes on. Anyway, I was also constantly lost in Paris. And so you've got to be prepared to kind of be lost. I don't know about you, but I'm not great at putting up any kind of map app, whether it's Waze or whether it's Google Maps. I'm just constantly struggling to figure out where that blue dot is going and how to kind of make that work in my favor. But
we got lost on the way to Versailles.
Yeah.
We took the train in the wrong direction. And then I'm pretty sure at one point my husband and I were about to get robbed. So we just like hopped off the train and then asked the person in broken French which way to go. And they were like, yeah, you've got another like 45 minutes to go in the opposite direction, you idiots. And then by the time we got to Versailles, we had about an hour and a half before it was set to close. And so we physically ran through the halls of Versailles. We saw the like main things, and then you can rent a golf cart that will take you through the gardens. And then you get to go back to like Marie Antoinette's little cottage. And everyone had told us that like, that's the real thing to see is the gardens and the outdoor space.
The gardens were so beautiful.
They were so beautiful. But so we ripped around Versailles in a golf cart as fast as it would take us.
And it was probably like €40.
It was, I don't even.
The golf cart. Did you go to Marie Antoinette's little cottage?
We did. Yeah, it was fabulous. It was very, very cool. It was so cool. And I was like, I get it. The rest of Versailles is like too big.
Those trees, the shape of those trees, I was like, I don't understand how they have this shape.
I know. Yeah. That's what I mean about the French commitment to looking good. It was just like
landscaping.
Yeah. Oh no,
I love the stories about people just peeing and pooing like in Versailles itself. Like they just. As much as it was this beautiful thing, apparently it really stunk and it was inundated with rats. It's had many different versions of itself over the years. But if you ever get a chance to go to Versailles, I think it's one of the wonders of the world myself. It is built on the backs of impoverished people. It was literally robbed from the French hardworking people that the king, Paris was so stinky and it was so kind of polluted that he moved his entire court of thousands of people and took all this money and built it outside of Paris where he could go and not deal with the stench of Paris and how big it was. But they just recreated another one. Well, the plague and everything that was going on. It's a really interesting history, but the opulence is kind of heartbreaking. But when you think about all the beautiful monuments that we have in the world, whether it's the pyramids, whether it's the Aztec culture in Peru, all those pyramids, anything in India, like it's any of these massive, what's that beautiful monument that Indian prince built for his wife?
Taj Mahal?
The Taj Mahal. God, I just having so many blanks. They were all built by really, really rich people that basically stole money from everybody else, and we wouldn't have these things. So whenever you think in terms of the Elon Musks of the world or the Bezos, they're the only people that can afford.
They better be building something
to leave those things behind. Well, I think.
Well, Machu Picchu, I will say, is like truly to this day the most spectacular like thing I've ever seen, and probably one of the best days of my whole life. And when you consider when they built it and where and how they got those materials there, like, I don't know. The ancient people of Peru are mind-blowing to me, because when you're there and you see they would have these pools of water set up for these sort of homemade sundials. Like they were already doing things to look into space and time, and I just and the proof that they found of trying to treat people, like there was a gold plate found in like a warrior's skeleton. So they were using gold. They were using gold because they had
surgeries?
In surgeries, because they had the wherewithal to know that this would be antimicrobial and better, but harder to come by. I mean, obviously you'd think that would be like a person of some nobility because they would have had access to this big gold plate in their head. But I just was every detail, and I'm forgetting most of them, that our guide told us. I just was like, my jaw was on the floor. And then to say nothing of like what you're physically looking at. I mean, it's amazing to me. I wish I could go back.
Is there a train that goes up there?
There is. Yeah. We took a really
so
fun
train.
train.
You don't have to do that perilous journey anymore, do you? Like if you're 80 years old, you don't have to walk up to Machu Picchu.
I recommend against it. Okay. We took a beautiful train. You fly into the city of Cusco and you take a train ride to like the nearest stop to Machu Picchu. And then you can hike up there, and many people do. But we simply took like a bus that takes you up like a switchback road where you feel like you're going to topple right off the side of it. And then you get up to the very top, and it was...
Jen just says, no.
Just no. And we got up there and it was really cloudy because it was first thing in the morning. And our guide said, don't worry, the clouds will burn off, because we couldn't really see anything. Yeah. And we did quite a bit of hiking when we got to the grounds of Machu Picchu, because it's big and there are more hilly portions than others. Yeah. And that when the clouds burned off, you realized where you were, and that you were amidst like the clouds. You were in what's called a cloud forest. Like that was our hotel was located in what they describe as a cloud forest. And it is unbelievable to think that people live there and built irrigation systems for farming.
Wasn't it always about protecting yourself from other people killing you in the middle of the night? Like, isn't that why people made villages on these high top mountains and where it was really hard to get to? Like,
their warrior messengers would travel from Machu Picchu to other villages, and they straight ran it. Like they just ran. And you're like they would show us.
Makes you feel real fit.
Oh my God. Because we got to these places and there'd be this narrow little literal runway. And I would walk out only so far and then go like, I have vertigo. I can't keep doing this. And I just thought to myself, and they're like, no, they ran this whole length,
Even
with like
in Greece last summer, like I remember.
But they only lived at 30.
Yeah, I should look up their average age.
So what? Sorry, Sarah?
In like the Olympic Stadium area in Greece, like how they got marble. The whole thing is made of marble up that high. I'm just like looking at it like, what? How? Like it's the wonders of the world are crazy.
That's why I'm so interested in
digging in archaeology.
That architecture from how archaeologists explain how things were put together. Like with the most recent thing about the pyramids, and trust me, ladies and gentlemen, we are not professionals. I'm just literally repeating these op-ed pieces that I read on the internet. So don't write me. Write the network in which our podcast is living on, which is the Women in Media Podcast Network. Write them. Well, anyways, they're saying that back in the day, the pyramids, like the Great Pyramid of Giza and the ones that kind of are surrounding it, had rivers around them, and that they literally had these big blocks on barges and they floated them up, and they had ramps that were sometimes 2 or 3 miles long leading up, so that the grade was very low. And that they would just roll them on logs. They'd have, 50, 60, 70,000 people rolling these rocks. But the rocks, they always wondered where the hell this rock came from, but they floated it down a river. So I was quite intrigued by that. Anyway, welcome to architecture. What is it?
Arden's architecture.
Welcome. I was going to say
Arden's anthropology.
Yeah, I was going to say architecture and anthropology at the same time. Welcome to today's lesson. Big moment in Wimbledon. Can you tell me what it was?
We're both drawing a blank. So over to you, Jan.
It brought a tear to my eye.
Did it?
Somebody made an appearance.
Celine.
Kate Middleton.
Oh.
Okay. Oh.
I don't know why I went to Celine.
Kate Gate's
Middleton,
back.
She came down the stairs.
How'd she seem?
So serene. And, she just looked lovely. She had a red dress on and she looks really well. I mean, we all know she's been going through cancer treatments for God only knows what kind of cancer, but she came down the steps with her daughter.
Aww.
And the entire place burst into this applause and like giddy, like squeaks and titters and laughter and excited chitter chatter. It was really amazing to see people that are in the public eye and the power with which they hold. And the reason that I was so kind of taken aback by the reaction to her is that it felt so joyful, so earnest, so authentic. No matter what your politics, all those people sitting there, thousands of people watching center court in Wimbledon, they stopped everything they were doing and they stood up. They applauded for someone with such respect, which is not the same thing as you would see like at a Trump rally or whatever. I'm just saying it's so earnest, and it was everybody, not just some people, everybody.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's kind of rooting for her, because you're just thinking what a tough situation to be in, that you're going through something so publicly challenging. And you've got kids now who are in the public eye. And again, like she knew all this going into being part of the royal family, but still you're like, you want to see her out with one of her kids watching a tennis match at Wimbledon. Like you're like, oh, this feels nice.
Yeah, it was just a really nice, joyful moment. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I loved just seeing that kind of energy and feeling it. I could feel it through the TV because no one had announced, and Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, will be making an appearance later. It wasn't anything like that. She just showed up out of the hatch. It was like she jumped out of a birthday cake. She looked so cute.
Imagine.
Are you guys tennis people?
I love watching tennis. I'm the worst tennis player, but I love watching it. I think it's so athletic. When they run and hit a ball between their legs back to the other court and win a point.
That's your trick you'd like?
No, they just run. Like I would rip my groin. I couldn't. Anytime I've tried to play tennis in the last 10 years, I hit the ball. It goes over the 30-foot high, mesh fence. And once we run out of our 3 balls, we're just running. So it's a good workout for me. But to me, a volley is 1 hit. That's not good. A 1-hit volley.
I picked up a racket pretty well for the first time in my adult life over the Christmas holidays. And there was a big tennis tournament. We were with a group of friends on vacation and there was a massive tennis tournament. And we're talking, these are athletic people. Like one is a former tennis pro.
I was going to say, aren't these rich athletic people?
Very wealthy, very, very competitive athletic people. And here's me, none of those things. And I just showed up and was like, hey, I hope you guys paired me with some talented tennis players to like even things out. And they were like, don't worry, we did. Because it was all teams. So I got paired with one of my friends who's the former tennis pro. And he's very, very kind. But you could tell that he was like, Caitlin, I need you to start paying attention to this, the way this game works. And I wasn't as terrible as I thought I would be. And I quite liked it because I like the vibe of tennis.
He wanted to win.
Like he wanted to win for sure. And also he wanted to win in the context of like this tournament with a bunch of other competitive people. Like I was there with like a semi-professional polo player. Like he used to play polo. He's now retired, but like he used to like sit on
the horseback?
The horse thing where you hit the ball with the
clunker? Okay.
Yeah, the clunker. Exactly. I don't know what it's called, but he was so good. And he was just like naturally athletic. Like I was just with a bunch of people who are naturally athletic. And so it was really fun though, because when you got it right, like when you hit the ball and you wanted it to go somewhere so the other person might miss it, and it did kind of that, I was like, oh, this is exciting. Like I loved it. And also to say nothing of like the cool clothes and everything. And I like the kind of the 1-on-1 or the 2-on-2 of it all, because it's not like sometimes when I see a team sport, there's just like so many people on the field or on the ice where I'm like, what's going on here? What's the strategy? But when it's just like 1 and 2, I'm like, oh, this is good. I kind of like that solo sport.
Are you the pickleball player or is that Sarah?
I don't play pickleball.
I haven't, but like I kind of want to try.
I want to try.
Well, my neighbor set up pickleball in their Quonset. So a Quonset is a giant metal structure. There's a lot of them in Alberta. They're mostly filled with dead motorhomes, farm equipment, and some old badminton rackets.
Like it's like storage units.
But she had set up a pickleball. She even taped it with masking tape. And I went, she said, do you want to come and play pickleball? This is in the middle of winter. And I drove down there, half a mile down my road, and we played pickleball. And she taught me, and she was so competitive. Teresa Clausen, you are super competitive, but it was so goddamn fun. I thought, I have a neighbor who's got a pickleball court in their Quonset.
Okay, I just looked up a Quonset for the first time. A lightweight prefabricated structure of corrugated galvanized steel with a semicircular cross section. It looks like a bunker. It looks like something out of...
This is huge. You could land an aircraft. And the guy that used to own it kept his helicopters in it. So if that gives you any indication of like...
It looks like something out of Oppenheimer.
You can make them as big as you want. Like you can... Quonsets are basically the things that would store like an indoor winter soccer league.
Yeah.
They would build a Quonset. And you've seen those white puffy buildings.
Yeah.
That look like they're filled with air
like a dome.
Or something. It's like a dome.
It's like a marshmallow man kind
lightweight structures, and they're movable. They say that the ABBA building where that ABBA show is.
Okay, yeah.
And listen, when I got off the train on Pudding Lane in London to go to the ABBA show, I'm like, the sign Pudding Lane, they said it's been stolen so many fucking times they cannot keep up with keeping the Pudding Lane sign at the train station. I would love anyway. When I got in there, I was reading a little of the history of the building, and it is something that can be dissembled. I'm thinking ABBA spent how much money putting this up? Because it was Bjorn and Benny that underwrote the entire thing. Mm-hmm. That ABBA show. You got to see the ABBA show. It's still going. And apparently that building comes apart, which is a type of Quonset idea. I like them. I think it's a great idea if you don't want to have like a permanent structure.
So, okay, when you went in there to play pickleball in this Quonset, which is not a sentence.
There was boats. There was
Is
trucks.
it warm? Is it well ventilated?
Warm
like, what's the vibe?
Warm as you could be. And there's a loft. So I think one of her sons and his wife live up above. There's another floor built in with a kitchen and bathroom.
I'm sure they were thrilled about the pickleball. It's one of the noisiest things you can do.
Hopefully they weren't home, but anyway, I don't know what made me think of that. But and as a caveat to this whole story, I want you guys to know that I was extremely athletic growing up.
Okay.
And
you heard it here first, folks.
I grew out of it. So I just want you to know that I played baseball. I played badminton. I was in like provincial championships for singles badminton.
Shit.
I was on the basketball team. We went to provincial finals in our division. I was a hockey player. I can't say that I was very good. I don't think I ever scored, but I could skate backwards.
Oh,
and,
I can't.
And I was a hell of a softball player. Okay.
I liked softball. That was really it for me. Softball, baseball. I was a big baseball girl.
So when I need a girl, I can call you because we always need a girl.
I would
Caitlin.
play for. I'll play.
Well, when you're here, of course. Open invite when you're here.
Well,
I don't think I'm good anymore.
Yes, you would be.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if it's the kind of thing that you like retain.
Good back catcher. I was a good back, and my hips are paying the price now.
Okay, I will say I was a designated hitter on my team, so I feel like
DH.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're a designated hitter on our team too.
Thank you.
I want to talk about people who have passed away because I don't want this podcast to go by and we haven't spoken about them. So this week there was a lot going on. The Trump shooting kind of trumped everything. Oh, see what I did there? You never want to pass away in and around an assassination attempt of any kind because your death gets lost in the shuffle. So I'll hand it over to you, Caitlin. We lost 3 pretty significant people in pop culture, let's say.
Shelley Duvall, who you probably know from The Shining, I would say most likely. And then Richard Simmons and also Shannon Doherty, who had been battling breast cancer for a very long time.
And one more, Ruth Westheimer.
Oh, right. Dr. Ruth.
Yeah.
So this is like, exactly. These were, especially if you're kind of maybe a elder millennial or older, you would have really known a lot of these figures. If you watch 90210 and the Heathers, obviously Shannon Doherty, kind of like a formative pop culture icon, and then Charmed. And Richard Simmons, who'd been a recluse from the public eye for years leading up to his passing, but someone who was either him tweeting him directly or someone tweeting on his behalf from his account was tweeting like mere hours before the news of his passing broke. So that was a little bit confusing to people.
They're investigating it now because they think there's something a little bit nefarious there. Like they're not sure if it was he unalived himself.
Well, and his housekeeper was this weird figure that people weren't a huge fan of, I don't think, for a while there. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an investigation happening into Richard Simmons passing. For that wouldn't surprise me at all. But The Shining was just about one of my favorite movies of all time. It's top 5 for me, for sure.
And probably it's on every must-see list probably on the planet is The
so
Shining.
Good.
Red rum.
Oh my gosh.
Red rum.
Really just like
Just
psychologically.
Murder backwards. Spoiler alert, murder backwards.
It's not just a cool brand of rum.
I
loved it.
Red rum?
Yeah. No, I'm saying it's not just a cool brand of.
Somebody should have a red rum in a bottle with like wax drippings that look like blood. And the elevator scene, I didn't want to get into an elevator for a long, long time. Those 2 little girls in the hallway and the blood filling up the elevator. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. So yeah, there was a lot of deaths, but it does get overshadowed. Ruth Westheimer, I learned about dildos from her. I learned about tampons. And I think I've talked about this before. My cousin, Karen, had to show me how to do a tampon when I first started because my mom didn't tell me. I couldn't. My mom, we just couldn't have the. One day she showed me a drawer. She said, "Here's the pads. You're going to need this." I was so mortified by looking in this drawer. She just said, "This, this you're going to have this happen to you." She didn't even say period. She didn't even say menstrual cycle.
Happen to you.
When this happens to you. Well, I mean, I think I didn't.
It's not wrong.
I wasn't alone with a mom that couldn't have those conversations, but yeah. So Ruth Westheimer, I used to like secretly be watching that, not for the sexual content because I didn't really know much about sex. I mean, my brother blurted out, a guy sticks his penis in the girl's vagina, like when I was 13, and I was so sad about that. I was so sad about it. I thought, no, that can't be right. It can't be.
It sounds violent.
No, but
which is the correct response.
In my mind, it was screaming no. So Ruth Westheimer, thank you for helping this, this little girl in Springbank, Alberta, that was clueless, that didn't really have anyone to talk to. My friends were so misinformed. My God, the information they had was so...
Oh my gosh.
I remember my friend, this guy, had obviously an erection beside her, and some of it got on her leg. And we ended up getting pregnancy tests to make sure that no sperm had gotten through her jeans, crawled up inside of her leg and touched her vagina and made her pregnant at 18 years old.
Like the sperm were going to battle, just
we didn't know, Caitlin. We didn't have any information. We didn't have any information.
See, the Canadian Dr. Ruth is Dr. Sue Johansson.
Yes.
And so that's who I had. Love Dr. Sue.
Well, I learned how to deal with condoms from Sue Johansson.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, how do I deal with that little tricky dicky thing? No pun intended. Bing bong.
Bing bong.
Oh my God. I just did a Google search for the book that I remember my mother giving me, and seeing the cover of the period book, if you want to look it up, is actually giving me terrible flashbacks right now. Oh my God.
You've unlocked a trauma?
I've unlocked a trauma. Yeah.
The period book?
It was called The Period Book. And I remember there was a page where it told you to get to know yourself and put a mirror down there. And I was like, no, I will not.
Get down there with a little hand mirror to see what's going on.
Yeah. And then I was not happy with that book from then on.
Well, my mom gave me a book called Enjoying Your Youth, and it was from the Mormon Church.
Oh.
And it had to do with masturbation.
I was going to say, spoiler alert, don't enjoy it, according to them, probably.
Well, it's
why
go
would
for
they
a brisk
call it
walk, have a cool
it?
shower. I don't know. I was so embarrassed that this little red book was
your
on
youth. Go have a cold shower.
I would die to come across that. Sarah, Google the book, Enjoying Your Youth book. See if it's something to do with Mormon literature.
I love that.
Youth,
and it would have been the 70s. It would have been the early mid 70s.
There's one that came up from the churchofjesuschrist.org that says young people learn wisdom in thy youth.
Okay. Well, it was a Mormon book for sure.
Okay.
If it has the word thy in it, I think we can all agree we're going to opt out.
I'm so curious. There's a link that came up that says, is it fun being a Mormon? Should I click on it?
Please do. The answer will be a resounding thy.
Well, I'm practically Mormon now. I mean, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm not engaging in any extramarital shenanigans.
You do swear though. Can they swear?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think they can swear up a storm.
Tell us about your necklace.
They do everything. Mormons have as high a divorce rate as anybody else for the national average.
Of course, because they're human, just like everybody else. Yeah. Everyone could get on their little imaginary pedestal and say they're closer to God, but
anyway, Sue Johansson. But Ruth Westheimer was 96 years old. Shannon Doherty was 54 years old. Richard Simmons, I believe, was 76. And
too young.
And who else did we say?
Shelley Duvall.
And Shelley Duvall was
74.
75.
Yeah. Way too young.
There's a really interesting thing if you look up on Shelley Duvall. There was a journalist that has always been fascinated with Shelley and collected her, any kind of stuff that Shelley had, knew every appearance that Shelley had made on the Love Boat or, any kind of television in the 70s and the 80s. This young journalist knew more about Shelley than Shelley knew about Shelley. Anyway, she contacted Miss Duvall, and they struck up a relationship over the last few years, and it is the most charming, sweetest thing of this. This journalist cannot believe that she sits across from Shelley or had cups of tea and talked about things. And Shelley was one of those people that was very admired. She didn't chase that fountain of youth and the Botox and the lip this and which is all good. Whatever you need to do to feel good, you go ahead and do that. But Shelley left Hollywood. She wasn't buying into it. And let's say she looked very rustic, to say the least. Shelley didn't do a damn thing. If she combed her hair, that was probably a monumental day. But if you get a chance to just look up journalist plus Shelley Duvall, you'll find the story of this young woman. It'll warm your heart to take a look at what this girl, her relationship with Shelley and how she made Shelley feel these last few years. She just lifted her up and took such interest in her and cheered her on. And Shelley was so touched. She thought she'd been forgotten, you know?
Yeah. With all these stories, there's a time capsule piece, like, you know, the mark they leave, the legacy. And like, it's been really interesting paying attention to Shannon Doherty's podcast. She's had this podcast that she started in 2023. So it's very new in the grand scheme of things. But it was called Let's Be Clear. And it's her kind of diving into like old friendships and show business. She's had on every co-star that she's had. She's talked about some of like the harder stuff, like why she left certain shows or what didn't work out. And to just have the last year of your life completely out there on a podcast as you're battling breast cancer that really struck me, because I've been listening to that podcast, and I, you know, to see her, like, she's gone.
That clip you sent me was haunting and encouraging. I'm not afraid to die. I don't want to die, but I'm not afraid to die because I'm a good person. I feel like I'm a good person, and I know the people that I'm going to see. But yeah, I think there was a lot more to Shannon Doherty than people gave her credit for. But once again, when you're involved in these culturally explosive television experiences that encapsulated an entire generation, like 90210 it was much bigger than the show itself, like of the sum of its parts. It went soul reaching. Those guys they filled 50, 60, 70,000 people in shopping malls when they made appearances together.
Oh my God.
Like, it was nuts.
Yeah.
And there was a picture of her and Luke that's, you know, had them kind of embracing. And I thought, oh my God, Luke Perry passed away from a stroke several years ago, implications of a stroke. Anyway, she's too young.
Way too young.
It's just heartbreaking. I didn't realize that Shannon was such a child star. Of course, you find out all these things when they pass over. Here's something to note. When every single person that's in the public eye has a cataloged sort of a death reel for them. So when you pass away, you're wondering, how did they get that together so quickly? And they're all oh my God, there's someone at my gate. But they have a reel already ready to spin in case you die. Like, I have a reel. My friend who used to work at CBC, she goes, oh my God, there's a reel for you. Like, it's basically put together, but it's so that that we're ready to go. If you kick your clogs, it's not like we have to like scramble, get some Jann stuff together, because they're going to need to run something instantly.
They joke about it on 30 Rock. Yeah. Because everyone in the kind of like showbiz knows that it's out there. All these news outlets want to have it like at the ready.
This is real time. Can you hear the dogs barking?
I can.
How many dogs we got today?
There's two. There's just two.
Joni's over?
Joni's still here. I'm going to be dropping her tomorrow. Listen, I want to just thank everybody out there. Drum roll, please. We have 64, and perhaps by the time this airs, we might have like 74 Patreon memberships.
Patreon.
I say tomato, you say tomato.
Do you want to know? Here, let's see. Membership, clicking on our membership tab, and what do we got?
65.
68.
Oh.
Since we spoke this morning, we have 3 more people.
Look at you guys.
I don't go away. I need to.
Yes.
Don't go away. Jann needs to deal with the barking dogs and her gate. Jann's gate, ding dong, sounds just like the put your seatbelt on alert on the flight. Did you hear it in the background?
Yeah, I did.
That's what it sounded like to me. I was like, oh, I should put my seatbelt on.
Every time this happens, I just wish it's Donna so that we can have Donna on the
I know.
podcast.
It's never Donna.
We have to get Donna on. We've been talking about this for far too... That'd be a great Patreon.
Oh, that's our first Patreon guest. Also, I hope you leave this conversation right now between you and I in some form in the podcast, because it's good.
It's staying in. Although we'll probably mute the barking dogs just so you can hear what we're talking about.
Just so it's not auditory overload. But yeah, I've thought the same thing, where I'll hear like, oh no, there's someone at my gate. And I'm like, please be Donna. We live in hope that it's Donna.
It's not Donna.
Dang it.
I think you knew that Donna has dementia, right?
I did not know this.
You never told us that.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Damn.
I don't know if I've got these in right, but I'll just.
If I can recommend a podcast that isn't ours, which I shouldn't be doing, but hey, it's
You can always.
a fairly recent episode of Armchair Expert, and they do a release every week called Experts on Expert, which is when they talk to somebody who is typically not a celebrity. It's somebody who is an expert in their own field. If it's somebody who works in psychiatry or a doctor, and they will have Dr. Sanjay Gupta on, who you might know from, CNN. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like a media doctor, but he's quite a talented and intelligent person. And they had him on to talk about a documentary that he's working on, and they were talking to him about dementia. And he was talking about lifestyle protocols for dementia and Alzheimer's. And I don't want to butcher this, but roughly, there was a case of one woman who was given a protocol to follow while she had Alzheimer's, and she was early stages diagnosis, but already like seeing the effects. And they told her to immediately go on a vegan diet, to work out for 30 to 90 minutes. Work out for 30 to 90 minutes a day, and begin meditation. And it was like a prescriptive form of meditation, like not just like sit there and imagine a flower. Like it's like do this specific type for this long. And they checked back in with her in 5 years after she was given this protocol, and her the progress of her Alzheimer's has stopped dead in its tracks at 5 years on. Absolutely nothing had advanced.
Whoa.
And that was not the prognosis when she was first, seen and talked to on film.
The only thing I don't do is meditate.
Yeah. So I was going to say, you're already doing two of those things. And what had happened was Dr. Sanjay Gupta he said back in the day, you would get the test for Alzheimer's and dementia, the genetic testing that they have now available. And I forget the name of it, ABCO or something like that. And so you get the test, but then there would be nothing for you to do. They'd give you no protocol. There's no medication. And so he said frequently, I would just tell people, don't bother with it, because it's just going to destroy your quality of life. And there's nothing we can do. But now, he said they're working on, obviously there's huge advancements in drugs, and because of the aging boomer generation, we know that we're going to be dealing with a higher rate of Alzheimer's and dementia in the next 10 to 15 years. So he said there were so many simple things now, because he has the gene. So he said he became personally very interested in this, and he had I think it was his grandfather or a close family relative who he lost to it. And Jann, of course, all about this from your experience with your mom. And so he said now there are all these protocols that they can give you that they genuinely believe there's scientific proof to support that it will improve how your dementia and Alzheimer's it progresses. One of the things he mentioned was toe spreaders. Spreaders and specific. He was prescribed
Do I need to hire one of those.
You need to hire a toe spreader. It's a cool new job, everybody. No, they're like these.
When you go get a pedicure.
Pedicure.
And they put those little foam.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I would imagine that would be a toe spreader. What about toe socks? I wonder if they would work.
They suggest that you wear toe spreaders for at least 10 minutes a day. They say the nerves that run from your brain go all the way down to your feet, and that there's all this connection between essentially foot health and your overall, not just your gait and your ability to not fall and just like stay upright. But now they're linking it to brain health. And because your nerves run all the way from your brain to your feet, you want to stimulate these nerves in your feet that kind of lose that over time.
I'm spreading my toes right now.
So you buy toe spreaders. You can get them on Amazon. They're cheap as anything. And they say, wear them for at least 10 minutes a day. Some people now are sleeping with them in. And he says like these actually have an impact. And of course the omegas and all that stuff. But I just was like,
coconut oil. I used to feed my mom vats of coconut oil.
Yeah. And he says, so it was interesting. I thought, so many doctors I've been hearing talk about the effect that inflammation has on your body. And so much of that is related to what you eat, and how many people are now recommending a vegan diet. And I'm really trying, as a result of many factors, to reduce the amount of animal products that I consume, but right up there for reasons is health. Like I'm like, Mm-hmm. My grandmother had dementia, like very severe dementia. We thought Alzheimer's, but
I don't want to get it. I just it's not something that I want to get.
Well, you're already doing 2 of the 3 protocols, and get your toe spreader on.
What I do is listen to low frequency sounds and music.
Oh.
So if you want to go on YouTube, if you want to go on, probably the Calm app would have low frequency sounds, and there's been many, many scientific studies done on. Like for instance, they play a low frequency sound to a table. They'll set a speaker on there for a table. with sand on it, and the patterns that it breaks into, these beautiful symmetrical patterns from these different sounds. But this guy was working with these low frequency sounds for years, and it cured his back. He said he couldn't figure out, like his doctor was saying, you don't have any fusion nerve, the shit's not there anymore. Like what was on this x-ray is no longer there. And he explained to this doctor about these low frequency sounds. But anyway, here we are, fast forward like 30 years later, he uses them every day. And he's saying that sound, and I'm just saying this because of your mention of meditation, that sound is going to be a huge tool in the healing arts. It's going to be part of how people fix themselves. And maybe that is one of the keys to why we're so attracted to music, and why music alters our mood so much, how music can soothe us, how music, you know, you pick out music for a funeral. Like what do you want to hear? How can we soothe, or how can music be a balm for the soul when hundreds of people are sitting there grieving the loss of a baby, of a parent, of a so I'm a firm believer in sound and meditation. So thank you for that reminder, because it's something I'm going to start doing more of. And I think there is things we can do. They talk about walking constantly. If you're not a worker outer, a lot of people are like, A, can't fucking afford a gym. B, no interest in it. Don't want to do that. Well, then get out there and walk, because guess that's free.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think sometimes it can feel intimidating, or like you're not doing it right. And he says, just get out there 30 to 90 minutes. It doesn't have to be like high intensity interval training. I mean, you just want to get moving, feel your feet on the ground. You know, if you can find a local affordable Pilates or yoga class, like get in there and do those things. It doesn't have to be strenuous.
YouTube, open your computer. There's all kinds of yoga. You don't need to have an instructor for $80.
Perfect example. Just go on YouTube.
There's millions of them. Listen, we're going to leave it there because we're going to have bonus material.
Oh yeah,
Patreon. So we're gonna say goodbye.
Tomato.
Patreon.
Yeah, it's Patreon.
What's the difference between me saying Patreon? Can you tell me? Is it voice note, voicemail? What bugs you?
Well,
guys?
I think that's how you pronounce the company that started it. Patreon. Yeah, okay, like you'd say, like it's. I think it's a take on patron. Like patron of the arts.
I'm going to say Patreon from now on. But I'm going to go back to voicemail.
That's fine. We'll bargain with you.
You can't have both. But listen, thank you for listening. So hit subscribe. Leave us a review. 5 stars would be great. It helps people find our podcast. You can listen to this wherever you listen to your podcast, your favorite podcasts. We appreciate you, and we're really excited about live events coming up, merch.
Ask us anything. Please get your questions in.
Ask us anything. That is going to be the first week of August, and we don't have to use your names. If you want to ask a question and just say anonymous, that's fine too. And you can ask us questions on the voice notes, or you can send us in by email. You can even send questions to our Instagram page. We are Jann Arden Pod on all the social platforms. So that's where
pigeons are fine too. Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, carrier pigeon.
I got a great voice note on our Instagram. Someone sent us a voice note, and you could hear in the background the ambient sound of where this listener is. And I know this place very well. So this is a little teaser when we'll play her audio when it comes to the Ask Me Anything. And I loved it. So that's why I like the voice notes, because you can hear where someone is in the world. It's cool.
Okay, listen, I'm going to say goodbye. We're so grateful that people are leaving voice notes and are even talking to us at all, because it means a lot. And not a lot of people respond or say stuff to us on a weekly basis. So anyway, Caitlin Green, Sarah Burke, thank you. And we'll see you next time. Stay tuned for bonus material, because you are a Patreon member. You're going to get so much stuff about puberty right now. Toodly-doo.